It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 539 of Accelerate, where I hold in-depth conversations with today's leading experts in sales, marketing, and leadership 6 days a week. Now, today we're doing something a little different. We're digging into our archives to bring you one of our most popular episodes, and that's measured by number of listeners that downloaded this and listened to it. So my guest on this particular favorite episode is Townsend Wardlaw. Townsend's a sales transformation architect and a very smart man about sales. The title of this episode is What You Should Be Doing But Aren't, Overcoming the Sales Fears That Are Holding You Back. And that's exactly what we talked about, how to break out of your comfort zones to do what you need to do to succeed in sales. Hello, welcome to the show today. My guest, it's Townsend Wardlaw, one of the great names in sales business. Townsend's a self-described sales transformation architect. Townsend, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Andy. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. I enjoyed talking to you a lot. We had a great time in Denver a couple weeks ago. So take a minute, introduce yourself to the listeners, tell them who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my full name is Townsend Wardlaw, kind of a fancy name, I guess, for a sales consultant. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, originally from Connecticut. And for, the past 15, 19 years, I have been running both a sales consultancy and then in the last 7 years, just as a solo practitioner. So I had a larger sales consultancy and pared it down, and now I lead the glamorous life of a solo practitioner, helping typically smaller companies, sub 10 million, who are trying to move from what I think of as entrepreneurial selling to professional selling. And I'm big on process and infrastructure and technology and creating repeatable systems so that companies can thrive and grow.
Love it. So how'd you get into sales?
That's a great question. I think my first real sales jobs were actually working in bike shops, believe it or not. I like to tell folks I didn't have a real job, quote unquote, until I was about 27. I graduated school. I was an aspiring road bicycle racer, until I figured I really wasn't all that good. I was great at training and very passionate, but I moved out to California to try and make it big, and realized that genetically I was not nearly as gifted as I would ever need to be. And I still traveled and raced bikes and worked in the bike industry a number of years, and moved back to Colorado. Well, not back to, I moved to Colorado probably around 2003, I think, something like that. I get all it was 1993. I'm a decade off there. And I worked in bike shops for a couple of years, and literally at the age of 27, I woke up and realized that I probably was going to have a difficult time finding a suitable mate and procreating, making somewhere around $14,000 a year. And I decided I was going to go and actually take advantage of my college education and get a real job. And otherwise, being unqualified for anything else, I figured I'd go after a career in sales or a job in sales.
Well, it seems to be such a common thread, is that people say, right? There's nothing else I could do except go into sales. And I hope that changes as we go forward. I know colleges are, at some point in the future, we'll have guests on the show that are leading some of these new academic departments that are focused on sales, where people are actually choosing to go into sales as opposed to saying, I had nothing else to do with my life, so I went into sales.
Yep, the career of default, right?
Right.
So, to get into sales at the time, and it probably is very similar now, I took a crappy sales job, right? I was getting my car, drive an hour and commute, and back in the day, I was hawking long distance for a reseller, right? Back when you actually paid for such things. Mm-hmm. And I think we were selling it at 30 cents a minute or something crazy like that. And I did very well and very quickly moved up the ranks from a little reseller to AT&T, and then got a job in Denver with a company called BDM that was actually building CRM applications back in the late 1990s. And then actually levered that into a job with Avaya. So I actually was Lucent and then Avaya. Mm-hmm. I like to say I set the land speed record from working in a bike shop and rolling burritos, making $15,000 a year, to a VP of sales for a Fortune 500 company or 100 company, making $250,000 a year. It was about 6 or 7 years, and it was a pretty heady little ride. And then this was somewhere.
So what did you know
What did you do differently than everybody else that helped you on that on that trajectory?
That is a fantastic question. The true answer, Andy, is I didn't know what I wasn't supposed to know, or I knew. Yeah, I did. I didn't know what I wasn't supposed to do. Right. So here I was, never having been in a corporate world, reasonably, intelligent and confident in all those great things, and I was surrounded by folks who seemed to hesitate, seemed to have read some rule book about the things they're supposed to say and not say. And there's this punk guy here just kind of popping off with what I actually thought was the right thing to do. And at the time, I believe they branded it as innovative. And I always thought that was sort of humorous, that innovation and drive was simply, in my mind, common sense. So,
well, and you were certain fearlessness. It sounds like.
I kind of nothing to lose, right?
Right.
Hadn't built a 10-year career, and to me, it was all sort of just a fun game. So,
well, so did it work? Now, have you procreated? Did you find the mate? I mean, did it...
Yeah. I found the mate. I procreated. The mate and I have parted, but I get to keep the procreations apparently. So I've got
all the way through college.
Yeah. Well, these days I hear it's even a little past college. Yeah. But I got two boys. They're 15 and 17, which is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
They're both taller than me now, which is also mind-boggling.
So let's go back. You talk about this fearlessness that you had that really propelled you on sort of this rapid trajectory. But now, when you're talking to groups, you're starting to talk about fear. Mm-hmm. So what's the connection? Where did you suddenly start becoming fearful, or what happened?
I think life happened. So quick catch up in 2002, I left the corporate world, started my own company. Ran that for about 8 years, got it to a couple $1 million. It was a sales consultancy, and we taught people how to sell and all sorts of stuff. And then that got shut down through a series of mistakes that I made, misjudgments, my first entrepreneurship run, and I made all the mistakes. So I folded that down, actually had to go personally bankrupt. I was guaranteed on everything, and took my family down, my marriage fell apart. My life got very interesting for a little bit, and then built back up my consulting about 7-8 years ago. Now a little bit of context, right? You talk about fearlessness. I didn't care in the corporate world what people thought. I literally left a high-paying job to start a company, not having any idea what I was going to do with a family and a mortgage. So that had been a theme. About 8 years ago, I'm standing on stage in Las Vegas speaking to a group of people, and I had a panic attack is the only way I can explain it. I literally, my body went numb. I could barely see. I'm in front of 1,000 people. I'm paid to be there. I'm supposed to be giving them wisdom and knowledge. And I basically walked/ran off stage, packed my stuff and went home. And I thought I was having a heart attack.
Now, was this like in the middle of the presentation or just right before you started?
No. In the middle of the presentation in front of 1,000 people.
It's like mid-sentence.
Yeah, it was fun. It's a good time.
Holy cow.
and I had spoken in front of 10,000 people before, and I never had a single worry, concern, etc. I had another gig the next month, and I don't know what was worse, the it happening again, basically, which it did, or sort of dreading and worrying that it would.
Right.
So it happened again, and it's a horrible, embarrassing, shameful kind of feeling, right? I mean, you're supposed to be this expert. You're supposed to be untouchable, unrattleable, and here you are doing what most people are most afraid of, which is choking in public.
Right.
That was about 8 years ago, and I literally stopped speaking in public. I stopped talking. I turned down requests for me to speak. I stopped seeking them out. I made whatever excuse it was. I actually convinced myself that it was sort of beneath me, if you can imagine that. And I kind of created this whole story in my head that public speaking is a bunch of nonsense and it doesn't really help anybody, and it's simply the sage on the stage. I stopped doing it. And I loved it prior to that. I mean, I honestly loved it. So that was sort of my, when that happened, that was the beginning of me, if you want to think about it, living and dealing with this fear. And that fear is sort of an interesting thing. And to jump forward a little bit, I'm speaking again. I actually spoke, I think the day before we connected here in Denver, and it was the first time I'd spoken in about, like I said, 8 years. And I spoke at the AAISP conference, and the topic was disappearing fear, dealing with fear, right? Because what I finally came to the realization was that fear had caused in me not only an inability to do something, that I loved and I felt reached a large group of folks, but it had actually convinced me that it wasn't even worth doing. And that was the really insidious part, right? And I've thought about this for years, obviously, right? And every time somebody would ask me, outwardly, I would say, "Oh no, I don't do those." But inwardly, I sort of had this embarrassment and this guilt that I wasn't out there giving my gift, doing what I love, kind of thing. And I thought about that in terms of all the clients that I worked with, right? All the companies, all the salespeople, and selling is a really, it's an incredible career, right? It's given me wealth, it's given me opportunity, all sorts of things. And we were joking earlier that it's the career last resort, but in a lot of ways, it's one of the few places that is really, I don't know, egalitarian in a lot of ways, right? It's
pure meritocracy.
Yeah, that's the better word, meritocracy, right? And somebody with even moderate education or intelligence can make fabulous money. But so many people look at selling as this career that, I could never do that, right? It's too scary. And, so for me, the two themes sort of blend together. And I've always encouraged people to get into sales and to pursue sales and overcome their fears. And, at the end of the day, I felt like a hypocrite, right? Because here I was hiding this thing and living with this fear, but trying to inspire others to be fearless. So that's really what got me to get back, number one, up on the stage and talking again, and number two, to share my story and just let people know that it's okay to be afraid.
And so how do you harness those fears to sell, right? I mean, because I don't think it ever goes away. I mean, there's people, I think, that a small fraction of people in sales that will claim, and maybe truthfully so, that they are fearless and they'll do anything, but overwhelming majority of people, every time you got to pick up a phone and make a call, there's this thought that runs through your mind. It's like, am I intruding? All the common things that sort of bleed through.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? How did you help people?
Well, I'll answer that in just a second. What I want to say first is the easiest thing to associate fearfulness with is kind of prospecting or cold calling, right? Mm-hmm. It's calling a stranger, but realistically, fear shows up all throughout the sales process, right? It shows up in discovery when I'm trying to get good information and probe for need, right? I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to ask a dumb question. It takes place later in the sales process when you're trying to, position or determine if there's competitors, right? We can't ask that, or it'll offend somebody, or, even when we're thinking about closing, right? A lot of salespeople are afraid of asking for the business, afraid of saying, "Listen, I think I understand your problem. I can help you. Will you give me some money?" And so it shows up all throughout, the selling process, this concept of fear. But when you take a step back and say, okay, well, what is fear? Fear is this force, and ultimately, it's completely irrational, right? I mean, why would anybody be afraid of picking up the phone other than we've told ourselves that? I guess what I'm trying to answer is, how do I share with folks at least my process of dealing with it, right? And the topic of the talk I usually give is called disappearing fear, and it's intentionally not called eliminating fear, because fear is actually kind of important in our lives, right? Fear is
it's a natural instinct, right?
Yeah, like if I walk out
survival.
If I walk out into the LA traffic or New York traffic, I'm fearless. That's not a good longevity scheme. But to me, first of all, fear is akin to joy, happiness, love, sorrow, right? It's just another sensation, emotion, whatever category I want to put in. The key is, are we calibrated properly, right? I see a spider and I pass out. Well, that's not a good calibration of fear, right? That's a severe overreaction. Standing up on stage and being nervous in front of an audience is actually, probably appropriate, right? You want to do well. You want to serve them. You want to give them, some wisdom, some knowledge for their money. But being paralyzed and unable to speak, that's an overreaction. So fear can have this, completely disproportionate power over us. And if you really think about why it is, my belief goes back to the fact that fear has power when it is hidden, right? When you're in an environment that fear is repressed, right? You're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be fearless. You're not supposed to be nervous. Fear can have tremendous power over you, right? When you're calling a CFO of a major corporation and you've got 7 minutes to state your case, if you're not quaking in your boots a little bit, something's wrong with you, right? That's normal. So the question is, how do you deal with it, and how do you normalize fear, amongst all the other things? And the simple trick, if you will, that I try to convey to folks is fear doesn't live in the light; it only lives in the dark, right? Fear can only have power when it's hidden. So, by way of example, I get very nervous when I get in front of folks, right? That has not gone away. It's not like I get up there now and I'm cured. But I stand up in front of folks, and the first thing I say is, I want to tell you, I am absolutely terrified to be up here in front of you. And it's the God's honest truth. I am, right? And oftentimes, my voice can even be shaken. I'm like, listen, hear my voice shake. And rather than trying to hide it or conceal it, I put it right out there, and it completely dissipates. It goes away. Think about this on a cold call, or think about this on a sales call, right? I'll coach people who are starting in sales. It's okay to say to somebody, listen, thanks for taking a minute to take my call. I got to tell you, I'm new and I'm a little nervous. So, be patient with me, right? You can actually talk to prospects like they're real human beings.
Right, and enlist them in the process, right?
Yeah, enroll them in it, right? And it's actually a really simple trick, but it's also very powerful, that if you can declare your fear, it loses all power over you. And that's frankly in every aspect of your life, whether it's in professional speaking or selling or relationships or what have you. But, sadly, as a society, as a culture, we're told, don't be afraid, don't show fear, and told it's weakness. And it's just nonsense.
Okay.
Nonsense. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, good. Well, we'll be right back after the break. Stay with us as we talk more with Townsend Wardlaw about fear, how to overcome your fears, how to harness them, and how they might be holding you back in sales and in life. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. Hi, this is Andy. I have a special offer for loyal listeners of Accelerate. It's a no-obligation free trial of my zero-time selling interactive online training. Now, I've worked with thousands of sales reps to teach them how to use my zero-time selling to boost their productivity and transform the results. And so if you want to learn the same proven strategies to help you open more doors, have more effective sales conversations with prospects, and close more orders, then my zero-time selling interactive training system is a fit for you. It's incredibly simple to start. Just take out your smartphone and text the word TRUST, that's T-R-U-S-T, to 96,000. Now, do you have your phone ready? You're going to send a text to 96000. That's a 9 and a 6 followed by 3 zeros. Now enter the single word message, TRUST, and hit send, and you hear right back from me with instructions on how to sign up for your free trial on my zero-time selling interactive training. I look forward to seeing you there.
Welcome back. My guest today is Townsend Wardlaw. Check him out at townsendwardlaw.com. So, before the break, we were talking about how fear can hold you back in life and sales. You gave some good techniques for addressing your fears, acknowledging your fears openly, even with your prospects, if you're a seller, to sort of, as you said, enroll them in the process so they understand where you're coming from.
But I think ultimately, fear, or at least some level of nervousness, if you will, represents humility in the process, right? I view that selling is a profession of service, right? We're not here to do something to our clients, get them to do something. We're here to help them achieve something that they want, right? And in the process, make some money off it, and that's fine. And I think going to your clients, showing up for your prospects with a certain level of humility and respect that, ultimately, if they're going to give you their money and their time, that's going to require a lot of trust, and to take that very seriously, I think matters. I'll tell you one of the scariest moments for me, and scary is a relative word, but the moment of most seriousness is when I know that a client has agreed to let me solve the problem, to work with them, right? There's always this moment of, oh crap, right? Now I got to get done, and if I don't, I'm failing them, right? This is their money, this is their business, this is their life, and if you don't have some humility and some nervousness around that, I think either you don't care or you're not human.
Right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that, at least for me, it's always one of the big points of nervousness is when you actually win the deal, right? Because then it's easy enough to say what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But it's always that moment of, and it could be temporary, but it's just like, okay, we promised we can do this now. Oh gosh, can we really do it? And of course you can, but it's
I'll mention something interesting. It's funny. I have a ton of videos up on YouTube, and they're all techniques, and they're all, I'm trying to just share with people how I do things, right? And I get all sorts of comments, some ranging from, hey, this is great, thanks so much. But there's a whole sort of segment of the sales consulting population and ultimately the selling population who leave essentially disparaging comments because they come from this world of sales has to be done from power, from strength, from superiority,
from control.
From control, yeah. It baffles me, Andy, because I don't think like that. I don't believe that's necessary, and they're basically criticizing the approach, saying, "Oh, this is weak," and you're giving the prospect the power, and I'm just like, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, the prospect has the power anyway, right? So anybody that thinks for a second that sales is in control is leading a life of delusion, right? That's just not the way it is. Prospects they always have had the power because they've got the money, and
that's been my philosophy.
It's become even more pronounced now that we've sort of equalized what I call the information imbalance that existed. Right. I mean, sure, when you got started selling, pretty much if the customer wanted some information about your product or service, you were the sole source of that information. So in one sense, the customer could only buy as fast as you were willing to sell to them.
Then,
but that's not the case now. No. I mean, now the customer, any information that they get from you is going to be supplemented by what they find themselves online.
Yep.
And so you're not in charge of it. But it is interesting because I Googled controlling the sales process. And you get about 40 million search returns. And so it's still this, and I agree with you. I mean,
there's people whose whole business is all about teaching these control techniques, and I just
it's sort of I hate to use the word, but it's a little bit Neanderthal, right? Because it's a sense that and that there's this machismo involved that
it's an ego play, right?
I have to be in control, and purely the sales guy's in control, and we're the dominant force, and just not true.
I often have clients say things like, well, how do we speed up the sales process? I said, well, you don't. The reality is it's a buying process, and you have to understand it, right? And sometimes you can influence it if it's in your prospect's best interest. But this idea of creating urgency, well, the urgency lives in their world, right? And to the degree to which you can uncover urgency or things in the prospect's life that matter, and then position that as a way you can serve them, sure, you can change the pace of it, but otherwise there's no techniques you're going to use to get people to spend their money faster. Not in this day and age.
No. And I love the distinction you draw, as I do, between the buying process, selling process. I mean, you can, on one degree. I mean, you're in charge of your sales process. You can accelerate that, but what impact does it have on the prospect's buying process?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's aligned, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in aggregate, if you focus on, how do I work to make every touch I have with the prospect more valuable to them, right? give more information, answer their questions, have more, like I said, more value to them in terms of making their decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you might be able to compress their buying process. But yeah, you have to really focus on the things that you can control, which is the activities that you do.
Yep. Agreed.
So in your business, I'm actually going to propose a sort of a hypothetical scenario to you.
Okay.
And think about it from the context of you as your sales transformation architect, but assume for a second that you were, in this hypothetical scenario, you were hired as a new sales leader by a company whose sales have stalled. And they're looking to get things revved up and going, and they really have a sense of urgency to get this accomplished. So what are the two things you would do the first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
Yeah. I've been doing this a long time, and it's pretty simple. I think you're probably along the same boat. When I walk into an organization, I'll tell you there's first of all, my philosophy is always, how do we identify and address the simplest problems that have the biggest impact, right? We're not trying to get fancy and use some new, complex closing techniques. What's quick and dirty to get this done? And I'll tell you, I have yet to walk into an organization with that challenge, right? Not enough sales, and find that they're doing enough activity, right? Basic activity, right? And not that activity is solves all evils, but when you walk in, they say there's not enough sales, and you say, okay, great, let me go talk to the sales guys and gals, I guess. I'm sorry, I got to remember that these days. But you go and talk to them, and you say, okay, what did you do today? And they say, well, I made 10 phone calls. Great, let's double that, right? Something simple, right? So number one is always, how do we just generate more activity, because that gets us in front of more prospects. That gives us the chance of having somebody who needs us now or later. So
what you're finding is they're just not making enough calls.
Calls, emails, whatever. Social selling. I don't get fixated on outbound, but they're not doing enough stuff, right? Plain and simple. You can't squeeze more out of a rock or a turnip or what have you. So simply increasing the amount of activity to a level that's going to generate more. And what that does is that honestly just makes people feel more productive in a lot of ways. So it has a psychological effect and an actual effect. The second thing, Andy, is actually a little bit counterintuitive. And in almost all situations, what I find is because they have, possibly because they're not doing enough basic activity, what they have started to do in the selling process is what I call selling too soon, right? So the calls they are making are typically designed to lead to a demo, right? So I walk into a sales organization, almost every time I see not enough activity, they say, great, well, okay, the calls you are making, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, we're trying to get them to do a demo, right? So my second fix, if you will, is we're going to need to slow down to speed up, because in your desire to move the thing faster by, let's get them to the product, you're doing more proposals to people who actually aren't even qualified. They've just agreed to take a proposal, and then you're spending all this time on the back end chasing them and following up. So usually the second, intervention, if you will, is let's stop driving for a demo or even a presentation, and let's shift to discovery, right? So let's make more calls, but now the purpose of those calls, rather than being get a demo or do a presentation, have a conversation, right? Just get to know them a little bit. And usually that causes a lot of consternation, because I thought we brought you in here to get things going faster. It's yeah, but it's going to go faster if we slow down and actually talk to them like they're real people, get to understand their problems and find pain, because A, we'll build credibility and trust, and we'll actually find the real deals. B, we'll stop wasting all this time on these things that aren't real deals, but we're just pretending that they are. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to skip a step, right? I mean,
no,
the thing is I think that a lot of sellers don't understand is that the way people make decisions and scientists have just researched this, it's a very linear process. And, people in their minds, and we do this when we make decisions about what we're going to buy ourselves, is we sort of go step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on. And there's a process. And one of those steps is an interest building step. And that really comes from that discovery phase. Yep. Right? Yeah. That's how the customer really begins to develop a firmer interest in what you're selling, is through the questions you ask as part of your discovery.
Well, I always found it fascinating, right? That, and there's a lot of companies that think this way still, that their underlying belief is that if they show you their product or their service, how it works, what it does, then that will make you want it or need it. And I just gotta have to scratch my head and say that that's not how life works, right? We don't, maybe for consumables like gum or, hot dog on a stick or whatever, but in businesses don't say, well, let's see what's out there and see what we want. They're trying to run a business. They have their own goals, their drivers, their objectives, and everything they do has to be aligned to that. Certainly they'll sit down and see a demo and they'll nod their head and they'll show interest. That's completely distinct from need, right? And people, I always like to say, it's actually not even buying, right? Nobody buys anything in business. You buy gum, you buy toilet paper, you invest in software, you invest in services, and investment has the connotation of a return. Therefore, it has to be anchored, tied to a, business value, something the company wants.
A business objective.
Yeah, I always sort of chuckle because I'll sit down with a salesperson and say, okay, how much your solution cost? They say, oh, it's $10,000. Okay, this deal right here, how much revenue, profit, margin, whatever, will your customer derive from that if they give you that 10 grand? And they say, well, I don't know. I say, okay, well, then what makes you think they're going to buy it? Right? ROI is not a concept, it's actually a formula. And if you have a null value in the R, return, and a tangible value in the I, the investment, you have a formula that doesn't work, and that's why deals, I will tell you, almost 100% of, when I go in and do some due diligence on why aren't things closing, it's one answer, Andy. There's no return on the investment. The investment is easy. You look at the bottom of the proposal, the back page where everybody flips to, and there's a price right there. There's no R.
Right. And let me give you my perspective why, because I think it's a great point. Why I think that happens is I think that personally, part of the problem is that as salespeople and sales leaders, there's sort of this conventional view of sales, which is what you're trying to do is solve a pain point. See, yeah. I don't think it's about pain. I think it's the point you made. It's about companies have business objectives.
Yeah.
Right? If you're carrying a pain is like a passive approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sick. I go to the doctor. They give me some medicine. I take it. It solves the problem. But that's really passive.
Yep.
But companies have objectives they're trying to reach. Your buyers have objectives they're trying to reach. So thus, if you think about it in terms of an objective, and I'm trying to help them meet their objectives,
yep.
Then that whole investment and the return on that investment should become front and center in the seller's mind. So yep. Focus less on how I'm solving a pain point and saying,
yep.
look, ask the customer, what are their objectives? Where do you want to be in 12 months? Where do you want to be in 18 months? Geez, how do we get you from here to there?
Well, and what happens if you don't, right?
And what happens if you don't? Absolutely.
Yeah. We forget people, companies are just made up of people, right? They're not this magical entity. And individuals, you and I, we have an incredible tolerance for pain, right? I've had back pain for 2.5 years. And you know what? I did nothing about it. Nothing. I suffered. I took some Advil. I dealt with it. When I could no longer exercise, right? I had to stop exercising because the pain was too great. Guess what I did? I did something about it. That's called an impact, right? So pain without impact, means nothing. Pain with impact is what people act. So my coaching to sales folks is when somebody says, oh, this is our problem. It's mission critical. We have to blah, blah, blah. What if you don't? What if you do, right? And if the prospect can't attach some real meaningful, tangible, right, numerical,
quantifiable,
yeah, then it's just yap, it's talk.
Yep.
Right? And you can't let the prospect, convince you, or you convince yourself that, simply, we could do better, or things aren't as good as they could be, or we're concerned about the future. That's talk. People don't act on that. They invest based on, something that will cause them death or dismemberment.
Right. Excellent point. So let's move on to the last part of the show. My favorite part is got some what I call the sales corner. I've got some rapid fire questions for you. You can give one-word answers if that's possible, or you can elaborate a little bit. But let's see what we can do.
All right.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What's the most powerful sales tool in your arsenal?
The telephone.
Name one application tool you use today for sales or sales management that you can't live without.
Salesforce.
Who's your sales role model?
Gosh, other than you, huh?
Other than me.
Mahan Khalsa has always been a personal favorite of mine. I don't know if people have even heard of him, but he's a great guy to check out.
Does he have a book people should read?
Yeah, it's called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play, Khalsa. To me, the seminal work on solution selling, other than Michael Bosworth. But Mahan Khalsa had his own firm. He was was purchased by Franklin Covey, and he's long since retired. But go find a copy of Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. It's an amazing book.
Great recommendation. So that sort of preempts my next question. What's the one book every salesperson should read?
Yep, that's the one.
All right. So what's your favorite music to listen to psych yourself up for a sales call?
I listen to electronic music, electronic dance music, house, techno, tech house,
Really?
deep house. Yep. I'm actually a DJ on the side as well. I've been DJing that kind of music for, like 30 years or something crazy like that. So
Maybe you're in the wrong line of business.
Well, not easy to make money over there. I can actually make money doing what I'm doing.
Well, you read about those DJs make in Vegas. Wow.
Yeah, that's not going to be me. But
Okay. All right. What? 50-year-old guy can't be a DJ? So what's the first sales activity that you do every day?
First selling activity. In a practical aspect, it's, send out cold emails and make some calls, right? If I'm up at 6 in the morning, which I am a lot, and I'm prospecting in a prospecting mode, right? If I'm not doing a lot of inbound, then it's, I'm going to bang out 10 calls and send 10 emails or go on LinkedIn and get that out of the way. I believe it's absolutely critical. And, it's the one force, the lever in anybody's business or practice or individual salesperson. Wake up every day, make 10, 20 outbound reaches, and you will never starve.
10 by 10.
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's right. Get 10 in by 10 o'clock or 9 by 9. So
10 by 7, man. Come on, you want to keep CEOs? Yeah.
What do you do to keep fit and healthy?
I try not to drink too much. It's not really a proactive activity. I've been a little constrained with the back thing, but I got to tell you, I've been doing the that T25 thing, which is like the little stepchild of the insanity workout. 25 minutes, I can bang it out in the morning, and honestly, it's a game changer for me. And then I also do a lot of juice. I actually found a place. I bought a juicer, but I found a place here that delivers locally because I'm just lazy about shopping and stuff. But yeah, fresh juice, non-high pressure pasteurized, like
All right.
for a day.
Are you still riding your bike?
Yeah, no, I've got a garage full of bicycles, and I get on my cruiser to go to the bar once in a while. But I've been a slacker on my bike. That's one of my goals this fall, is to get back on at least my mountain bike, my back stuff notwithstanding.
All right. So last question. What's the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
Wow. Are you insane? Gosh, what did I get asked by salespeople? People always ask me how I get started, and I kind of told that story in the beginning, but,
right.
I get a lot of, I try to make myself very available to my audience, to people, read my blog or watch my videos. And, what I think they really ask me is not so much how do I get started, but how do they get started, right? Or how do they get in, or what can they do to break into sales, if you will.
Okay. How do they overcome their fear?
Exactly.
All right. Good. Well, Townsend, thank you very much. I want to thank our guest, Townsend Wardlaw, for joining us today. It's been a great conversation about fear, right? I mean, how do you overcome fear? Fear is such a central part of selling. How do you overcome that? And life, right?
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining us. And remember, people, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new, something to help you amp up your business, something to make you better in life. And I think we might have helped you with that today. So until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.